We live in a time where the loudest voice seems to win. On social media, in the news, and meetings, it's a battlefield of voices, opinions, arguments, and egos. But in the middle of all this noise, there's always someone different. Someone who doesn't shout, who doesn't put themselves on display, who doesn't try to dominate through words. They dominate through silence. Have you ever noticed that? In every crowded room, there's always one person who's quiet. Not because they're shy, but because they're strategic. While everyone scrambles to sound smart, they observe. While everyone rushes to be heard, they listen. And in the end, they win. This isn't just a story about staying quiet. It's about power, about presence, about the invisible dominance of those who don't need to announce themselves in order to lead. In this video, you'll discover why. In a world obsessed with visibility, true power still belongs to those who know when to stay silent, and how silence, this forgotten weapon, can become your greatest strength. This story doesn't begin today. It began centuries ago with men like Niccolò Machiavelli, a man who lived in the shadows of conspiracy, betrayal, and deadly games of power. He understood something most people still don't. What you don't say is just as important as what you do, maybe even more. Silence is the first disguise of power. It's the veil that shields the plan, the space between thought and action, the moment where strategy is born. But today, we live in the age of overexposure, where sharing is expected, transparency is worshipped, and being seen is mistaken for success. We live in a time where every thought must be posted, every opinion turned into a caption, every step shown to the world. But what if we're wrong? What if real power still belongs to the one who watches before speaking, who plans before promising, who stays quiet while everyone else drowns in their own noise? The man who knew too much and said nothing. The strategist didn't need to say much. He listened. While others tried to prove how smart they were, he collected information like a thief in an art gallery. Once, during a high-stakes business negotiation, he was the last to speak. His competitors revealed their intentions, their worries, even their weaknesses, in an effort to seem confident. When it was finally his turn, he simply said, "Interesting," and then silence. The tension in the room became almost unbearable. One executive began justifying himself. Another offered up more details than he should have. By the time the strategist spoke again, he knew exactly what he wanted and how to get it. That's how silence works. Not as an absence, but as a hidden presence. It weighs on the room. It creates pressure. It reveals others without revealing you. It's not passivity. It's invisible action. The invisible cost of words. Every word is a commitment. When you speak, you tie yourself down. You hand others a map to your mind, and anyone who holds your map can find your weaknesses. Machiavelli once wrote, "Men judge more by the eye than by the hand." In other words, people believe more in appearances than reality. And words create appearances. When you share your plans, your ideas, your emotions, you expose your vulnerabilities. You lose the one thing still under your control, the other person's uncertainty about who you are. And in the game of power, uncertainty is both sword and shield. 3 forms of silence that transform. 1. The silence of intelligence. Fools rush to speak. The wise wait. And while they wait, they learn. In negotiations, debates, or any high-stakes situation, the first to speak usually loses because they reveal, because they commit. Silence in this context, is a form of data collection. You listen, you process, you analyze, and when you finally speak, you strike with precision. There's a story about Warren Buffett, one of the greatest investors of all time. In meetings, he was always the last to speak. Why? Because while everyone else tried to impress, he listened, he observed, and he made better decisions by watching others expose their own flaws. 2. The silence of authority. Think of someone you admire, a leader, perhaps. Do you remember everything they said? Probably not. But you remember their presence, their posture, their calm. Great leaders don't speak much. They speak well and only when it matters. Roman emperors wore silence like an invisible crown. When they spoke, the world listened. Not because they said more, but because they said less. Those who talk constantly become predictable, ordinary, forgettable. But those who measure their words with surgical precision, they become figures of authority. They don't need to persuade, they simply are. 3. The silence of ambiguity. Sometimes the key to pleasing both sides is not choosing either. Machiavelli advised, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." But often it's even more powerful to remain undefined. Silence lets others project onto you whatever they want. Hope, fear, respect. When you don't declare yourself, you stay free. Free to move, to adapt, to win. A skilled strategist never ties their identity to one flag. They read the winds. They walk between extremes, and they win because no one sees them coming. When saying nothing says everything, silence creates discomfort. It forces the other person to face themselves. Have you ever noticed how awkward silence feels in a conversation? People rush to fill it. They say more than they should. They slip up. And in that moment, they lose. The strategist understood this. He used silence like a trap, like a mirror. He let others speak and expose themselves. This technique is used by skilled interrogators, master negotiators, powerful leaders. They speak less, but say more. In psychology, there's a concept called gap filling. When someone doesn't have all the information about you, they'll fill in the blanks with their own imagination. And that's where true power lies. You become what others project, not what you reveal. The illusion of transparency. We live in the age of exposure, but transparency, despite what we're told, isn't always a virtue. Sometimes it's just weakness, dressed up as courage. When you reveal everything, you become predictable. When you overshare, you lose control of your own narrative. So what's more powerful? Being understood by everyone, or being mysterious enough that people hang on your every word? Modern culture teaches that authenticity means saying everything we think. But Machiavelli knew. Sometimes the truth works better when it's left unsaid, or only half spoken. Authenticity isn't overexposure, it's consistency. And silence might be the most elegant way to stay authentic. How to use silence with purpose. Before taking a position, investigate. Don't share your opinion until you understand everyone else's. Ask more, listen more, let them speak. Speak less, but with more weight. Cut the explanations. Make your words heavier. A true leader doesn't justify, they decide. Get comfortable with discomfort. Practice silence even when it feels awkward. At first, it will be hard, but soon you'll see how powerful it truly is. Learn from the masters. Study the silent ones who changed history. Gandhi, Buddha, Napoleon. Churchill. Men of few words and immense impact. The shout. No one hears. Most people are screaming to be noticed. The strategist. He stays quiet, but everyone listens when he speaks. You can be like them, trying to win through noise, speed, and overexposure. Or you can learn from Machiavelli, from the great strategists, from the leaders who never announce themselves. They just win. In a world where everyone talks, true power belongs to those who know when to stay silent. Be quiet, watch, wait, and then win.